on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here to talk to you about War of Realms by Jason Aaron and Russell Dauterman. This is a 6-issue big Marvel event from a few years ago, and I was surprised how much I did not like this story. I should go ahead and point out I have not read most of Jason Aaron's Thor run. I read the first volume way back when, and I liked it, but I just never got around to continuing reading that run. And so when I saw this, I saw it was written by Jason Aaron, and I kind of put two and two together that this had a lot of Asgardian stuff in it, but I saw that everyone else in the Marvel Universe was in this as well, so I assumed that this was a big Marvel event and that this wasn't really the finale to Jason Aaron's Thor run. Instead of this being titled War of Realms issue 1 through 6, this should have been titled Jason Aaron's Thor run volume 25 or whatever. This really does feel like it is concluding a lot of threads that have been running throughout Jason Aaron's Thor run. And so if you haven't read any of that, you're going to feel a little lost, or at least I did. And I was familiar with a lot of the big stuff from his run, even though I hadn't read any of it, and I still felt lost reading a lot of this. But that was not the only reason that I was unhappy reading this. Whenever the first issue ends, the War of the Realms has begun. Malekith is a dark elf who showed up way back in Walt Simonson's Thor run. He has somehow gathered a large army. There are these women with flying horses. They're from heaven, but not heaven from the Bible. It's spelled Heven, so that may be a thing from Norse mythology. I don't know. There's this shape-shifting CEO guy who's from Earth. There's frost giants. There's all these people or items or creatures working with Malekith, and they have been waging this war across the 10 realms. We are told there are 10 realms, even though I was 90% sure there were only 9 realms in the Thor cosmology, and for some reason they have saved Midgard for last. At one point we find out that Malekith hates Midgard the most because humans are so valued by the gods, which that's news to me because, especially in the Norse pantheon, I never got the feeling that the Asgardians really cared that much for the gods. It seemed like it was just Thor who really valued them, but whatever. So for some reason, Malekith is bringing this war to Earth, and at the end of the first issue, it's just all-out chaos all over the planet. There's fire creatures attacking in Paris, Australia. There's all kinds of crazy end-of-the-world stuff going on all over the planet. And then you keep reading, and by the time I was like 4 or 5 issues in, I realized nothing has really happened. There's still a whole bunch of people fighting in this war. In issue 3, the same stuff is happening that was happening in issue 1 and will be happening in issue 5. It just feels very monotonous. It feels like Jason Aaron had a lot of big ideas that he wanted to write around, and then he had those things happen throughout this story, but they don't feel like integral parts of the story. At one point, Iron Man and some dwarves make a big metal armor for Odin, and that feels like a big heck yeah moment where you're gonna do this number right here, except that it doesn't really amount to much because Odin is not one of the key players in the finale. So it feels like they just wanted a big, like, oh, that's kind of cool. Iron Man made an armor with Shuri from Wakanda. They made an armor for Odin. At one point, Heimdall is blinded somehow. I think that happened before this story started. And then Daredevil is able to pick up Heimdall's sword, and then he's able to hear all across the universe in the same way that Heimdall was able to see all across the universe. It's kind of a cool moment, but then it's taking away page time from Thor, who is absent for over half of this story. And then he is trapped in the realm of the Frost Giants. I think it's Svartalfheim, I don't know. He's trapped in there for like 4 issues, I think. And then some of the Marvel heroes have to go and rescue Thor. He lost an arm, and that's a big deal because near the very beginning of Jason Aaron's Thor run, Thor teamed up with a version of himself from the distant past when he at one time wasn't worthy of Mjolnir, and then a version of him from the distant future where he's missing an eye and he has a robot arm. And so in this story, he loses his arm, and then he gets a robot arm made for him. And then once again, he teams up with past self and future self to defeat Malekith. And they even mention at one point, well, it worked once before, so let's do it again. And I'm sorry, but pointing out that you've used this pony already in your bag of tricks before does not make it okay to use it again. I feel like they should have acknowledged, someone should have said, hey, why don't you try time travel? Why don't you bring a whole bunch of Thors with you? And then Thor could say, Malekith has already, he's blocked the time stream or something. It has to be me alone or whatever. But anyway, that ends up being pointless because as far as I know, this leads right into the Donny Cates Thor run, where at the end of that issue, the first issue of that run, he is healed with universal galactic magic, and then he gets his eye back, gets his arm back, and it's almost like none of this even happened. And that's not Jason Aaron's fault, but whenever something big and huge like this happens, you want it to feel like it has consequences. And when the following month those consequences are removed, it kind of makes it feel hollow. And this whole thing feels hollow, because if this is a conclusion to Jason Aaron's Thor run, Thor is not nearly present enough in this. He is very active in like the last 2 issues of this book. At one point, he gets Mjolnir back, and they act like it's a huge deal. And I was confused because I had no idea that he had lost Mjolnir. And then he mentions that he was unworthy, and that they mentioned something from the original Sin storyline where Nick Fury says that Gore the God Butcher was right, and somehow just him saying that makes Thor not worthy of lifting Mjolnir. They mention all that, and then he says, well, now I'm just going to try and pick up the hammer, and oh, hey, I'm able to do it. And I'm confused because earlier in this story, Thor was lifting and throwing hammers. So I don't know what's the difference between those hammers and this hammer. I have no idea. Then at one point they mention the Warhammer that Jane Foster picks up, and I had no idea what that was. It had never been mentioned in this event. And then in the last issue, Jane Foster mentions it. She says something about the Warhammer, and I'm confused, and I'm assuming this is something that was set up in Jason Aaron's Thor run, but if you do not set it up here, then it feels like you are pulling it out right out of your butt. So I didn't really like this story. It felt very monotonous. Each issue just kind of felt like the same. Like, okay, here's Wolverine teaming up with Luke Cage, and they're going to rescue Captain America, or they're going to rescue Thor over here, and then here's Spider-Man teaming up with these people over here, and it was just a whole lot of that for over half the event. It didn't feel like much of a Thor story, but at the same time, if you have skipped out on Jason Aaron's Thor run, then you are going to feel like you're missing out on stuff, because there's a whole lot of Thor stuff that plays into this story that you might be a little bit confused about if you skip all of that. So I ultimately was very disappointed with this, and I hate to say that because I normally really like Jason Aaron's stuff. I really liked his Incredible Hulk run. I liked Wolverine and the X-Men. I liked the first volume of his Thor run. Haven't read past that. I like a lot of what I've read from him. I just, unfortunately, didn't think that this was a very good story on its own, nor do I think it works as a finale for his Thor run, since you kind of don't get a whole lot of Thor in most of the story. I don't know. I feel like my thoughts are kind of scatterbrained here. I didn't really care for this story, so let me know what you guys thought of this book in the comments, and I will see you guys in the future. In the meantime, have a great rest of the day. Have a good one.